Just when you thought that the Supercross Championship had been decided, everything gets thrown on its head. So 1 week past, 2 rounds down, and the game has changed completely. Just when you thought this championship was done, settled, everything has turned around, quite considerably actually, in both classes. We're going to break that down just a little bit in just a moment. We missed a speak after the last round, so I'm going to include both of these rounds into this little talk. Now, one of the things that I did bring up in the very first talk was how are these guys going to manage doing the 3 races per week, effectively 3 races per week, without having that big week gap in between. Now, I think we're starting to see these cracks right now in some of these riders, namely, it could be Ken Roczen. Now, everything I say in this is only an educated guess. We do not know the behind the scenes stuff that's going on. We can only go off what my knowledge of racing and what we're seeing on the track. And I think at the moment there's a bit of a combination with Roczen. Now, before I get any further into this, I think there's a full disclosure I need to say, and that is that I am a huge Roczen fan. Have been for years. Roczen is my guy. I always want him to win. So anything that I say in a negative retrospect of him is only a personal opinion from a rider's point of view. That being said, I am not a Webb fan. Don't get me wrong, Webb's a great rider and he is proving it week in, week out, and we'll touch on that as well, but not a massive Webb fan. So everything that I say is an educated opinion from myself, being a rider, a professional rider in my time as well. And I think these are the little points that are going to play out over these next few rounds. I mentioned in my last vlog that if we get any kind of rain, this is going to play a big part. Obviously, mud, rain, that is going to be a big factor, and we saw that today with the racing that went down. The mud was a major player in this championship, but it's not just going to be this weekend. The dirt now is going to be soaked full of water. Although it does look like it's got a pretty dry, hard base underneath, these Dirtworks guys are going to have their work cut out for them to try and get a track that's going to be in a good position to race next weekend. They're going to have to work with this sloppy mud that they've got right now. In saying that too, we did see by the end of the race that it was drying up a little bit, so there might be a little bit of saving grace. However, I feel going into this next round, we are going to still see some of those effects of this rain in the dirt and the way that the track breaks down. One thing that I didn't touch on out of these last few vlogs was the altitude. Now, I don't know if anyone's really taking notice of it, but these riders, when they're getting off their bike, they're having a small break before they come and talk to the TV in their post-race interviews. Those boys are still breathing very, very heavily as they're up talking to those guys. So it really is looking like, from our point of view, that the altitude is playing a big part in the fitness and the way that these races all fold out at the end of the day. Personally, I haven't ridden in those kind of altitudes. I don't fully understand, except for the knowledge that I've got third hand, of course, that it really does play with your fitness and the way you breathe. Personally, I don't have that experience, but it is showing right now with all these guys exactly how difficult it is for them to go and race these races for 20 minutes like they are, flat out 15 minutes, 20 minutes. We're seeing some of the best riders, the fittest riders in the world, really struggling to put all of those laps together towards the end of the race. A few other key points going forward from here, and I did speak of this at the first vlog we talked about, is how the rider's confidence from a good result will flow into the next round, and also how they will rebound from a bad round. Now, this is going to play into both the 250 and 450 class. So let's start with the 250s. This race with Shane McElrath, I am extremely disappointed with how it turned out for him. We do have to look at it both ways though. The very first start, McElrath got out to a great start. He did absolutely everything correct in this mud race to go and put pressure on this championship, and he did get disadvantaged by that crash that stopped the race. And having Sexton so far back was a really good spot for McElrath to be in. However, we did have the restart, and he was up there at the start in the lead, and he was the one that threw it away. I don't think there was any interference, I don't think, from the lap rider. I just don't think that McElrath judged his position on track going around that turn. I think that the slippery conditions going into that turn also played against McElrath. He wasn't able to brake as hard as he did. You could see that he was going for that line lower than the lap rider. and I just think he put himself into a slightly bad position. Sexton, though, he's made the big advantage out of this. It was coming down to Sexton turning everything around for himself for this championship after that first race where he jumped on that rider and went down. He did, though, rebound. He could have gone into that next start and, had that mindset that he almost threw that championship away, and which he almost did by that crash. But he turned it around straight away. He didn't let it get to him. So that rebound that I spoke of, about getting out there and doing it again, he has done exactly what he needed to do for this championship, and he's kept it alive. And I'll tell you what, I did say this was the weaker of the two coasts, maybe the more boring of the two coasts of the 250s, but they have turned it around into a championship that is well worth watching, and it's going to go right down to that very, very last race. Also, adding to that point, the fact that I did say that this is the weaker of the two coasts. We really do have only the two fast guys out front, being Sexton and Matherath. However, after watching the performance of these guys in this mud race, I'm now starting to feel that the way they rode that race was quite flawless. Obviously, they made some small mistakes, probably the wrong word for it, but they were so strong in that mud race, the way the ruts formed up. They pushed it right through to the end, and I think if we get down to it in the East-West shootout, if we get a track that's similar to this, these two guys actually might be major contenders to get those overall places in front of the West Coast. There was some superb riding by both of them. They've both kept their championship hopes alive. They both turned it around. Everyone expected McElrath to go out and win, like he did first time back out. And then from years past, they expected him maybe to drop off. He hasn't done it this time. He now is in the position he needs to rebound from this bad result. Although it was second place, a great result. But in his mind, before that restart, he had that race won, and I think he did. Absolutely had that race won. He now has to go back, forget everything that went down. He could easily just look at that race and go, I had the race won, they restarted it, that lapped rider, all the excuses in the world. If he dwells on that going into the next race, it's going to be over for him. So it's up to him now to keep this championship alive. And the way he's been riding, I believe he's going to be able to do it. McElrath is really strong at the moment. Sexton has had some issues. It's going to be good going into these last few rounds. Now let's talk 450s. Wow, what a couple of weeks, or a couple of rounds I should say. It's only been 4 days apart. What a couple of races we've seen out of the 450s over the last couple. I want to touch with Roczen first. Last round, not this mud race, the round before. Roczen was easily the fastest guy out on track. Easily. In that final, he was absolutely blitzing it. And I haven't seen him pass the riders from a little bit back in the pack as quickly, as aggressively, and as efficient as he did that day. However, that possibly altitude, he's come out and said that he's having trouble breathing. We don't know the behind story to that. One's got to think, though, that surely this altitude has to play against him in a way. It's a situation, again, I said I have never experienced it, but I feel it's a situation that they have to manage probably for the entire 20 minutes. The intensity that Roczen had that day was insane. The start of that race was so fast for him, and I thought, man, he is on tonight. The very first lap that we saw him start to Cooper Webb jumper through the whoops, I started to think, uh-oh, what's going on here? I thought he was just looking for a different line, a different option. And then he got back on top of the whoops next lap, but then it all started to fall apart. And as I said, I'm a Roczen fan. I really want to see him get up there, but he's just struggling, and I'd really like to know what it is that is holding him back with his breathing. It must be extremely frustrating for him, and extremely tough just to be able to get out there and ride it, knowing that these things are going to possibly come up towards the end of the race. So hopefully he can turn it around this week in the mud. He started well in the heat again. He was back in that final race and just really couldn't get that ball rolling. And it's unfortunate that the championship, I believe, for Roczen is over as far as the win. He is going to be fighting to maintain his second position in this championship with the way Cooper Webb is riding. I think Webb is the big challenge for him. I think this championship's decided, and we'll touch on that in a second, but it's going to be down to Webb and Roczen and how they do these next races. 4 rounds to go. It's going to be very, very close. Tomac, man, he is a different man. I said that from the start. He is a different man this year. Last round, not the mud race, the round before, he started his night very similar to what we've seen in previous years where he has thrown the championship away. He came out in his heat race, he got a bad start, he did not look good for the first laps. And in years previous, that's how the rest of his night was dictated. He rode the rest of the night that way. But maybe 3 or 4 laps into that first heat, he turned it around. He said to himself, I am not going to lose a championship this way. And he turned into beast mode once again, like we see out of out of Tomac. And then even in the final, he didn't get the greatest of starts, and it took him a couple of laps to get going. However, he got it going and again became that beast mode rider that we so often see out of him when those tracks start to deteriorate and become a very trying, difficult track. I really feel it is Tomac's championship to lose from here, and with the way he's riding, I don't believe he's going to. Cooper Webb, I said it the last video, if he gets a win, he is going to bring so much confidence forward and he is going to be very hard to beat. He's proven that. Cooper Webb is back on fire. I do not like the way he wins his races when he can jump through whoops. It's a frustration of mine. You see Tomac just manning up and nailing it every lap. I understand, and I'll probably get criticism for this, that I understand that being able to jump through the whoops is a technique and it does work for him. 100% it does work for him. However, saying that, in this mud race, he manned up for the whoops every single lap and he was strong through the whoops where a lot of guys were failing. So it was great to see that Webb finally has turned that around and he really is a major threat. Well, I don't know if in the overall of the championship, had he not had those problems earlier on in the season, then for sure he would have been one for the championship. You know, he has put himself into this position after that big crash he had. He came back out the next week and he did fight for the position he's in. So, props to Webb. As I said, he's not my favourite rider, but he is proving that he is a championship rider and a good deserving winner of the championship last year, and he's really proving it again this time around. He is going to be tough to beat. The only thing Webb can do, I feel, going into these next couple of rounds, and I do fear that we are going to see this in these next couple of rounds. We caught a glimpse of it at this mud race. The only way for Cooper Webb to win this championship is for Tomac to have an issue of some sort. Now, whether that'd be on Tomac's behalf where he doesn't get a good start, he rides himself back in the field, although it's now got, is it 31 points, he's got a full race point lead over the next guy, so he can take it a little bit easy. I feel we may see Cooper Webb come out and try and push the point to push either Tomac into an issue that will put him back in the field to give Webb a chance to win this championship, or we might see Cooper Webb ride a little dirty for this championship. Now, don't hold me to it. I just caught a glimpse of it on the mud race. I've seen it last year as well. If Cooper Webb wants to win this championship, something is going to have to happen to Tomac. Will Cooper Webb be the guy to make something happen to Tomac? That's going to be the question over the next couple of rounds. So Tomac does have that points lead over Webb in quite a good amount. So why did we see Tomac this week ride so hard and aggressive to make sure he won that race? He didn't need to. Any person that's thinking about the championship, and especially with this race being the way it was, being so rutted, so wet, the lapped riders, there were so many risks involved in this race. There was really no need for Tomac to go out there and ride as hard as he did. The reason he did it is he knows that once Cooper Webb gets that confidence, he's like a little chihuahua, man. He will just keep coming at you. If Cooper Webb got away with a win this week, the next 4 rounds were going to be absolute hell for him to try and make sure he holds that championship. He's in a comfortable position, but Webb would have made it very, very hard for him to make sure that he holds that championship. It was a big power play this week for Tomac to make sure that he won that race, and he made the passes on Webb, the same as Webb made the passes on him. It was a real power play by both riders. They needed this win this weekend to set them up for the next 4 rounds. And I mean, to lap all the way through to 3rd place, these guys are another level. I mean, that was incredible to watch, both of them. And out of the two, again, on a track that was really pushing these riders to make a lot of mistakes, I feel that Webb was probably the guy that made the least mistakes again. Another solid ride out of him. As a rider, I hate the mud. Absolutely hate it. Just to ride around that track would have been extremely difficult. To race that track, almost impossible. And then to be on their level of racing, that's just insane. How they were attacking that track, what they were getting away with, and the jumps that they were doing and how they were doing it. Webb from the inside for that triple, I called it 2 laps before Ricky did. I saw him do it in the background. I knew that was a part where he was coming up the inside and making a bit more speed and a bit more time on Tomac. You know, these guys are finding stuff every single lap that they've been out there, and I think that is a major key at this level for these guys to go out there and just search for them lines and make sure they find every little advantage they needed at the moment with how close both of them are. It's so good to watch these riders, these 2 guys, go out there and absolutely destroy the rest of the field. The way they're riding, it's just, yeah, next level. Great ride by Anderson. Good to see him back up there. We did call it a couple of weeks ago that Anderson was looking good and he would probably get up there on a podium. Again, at the moment, I'm still standing with, I don't feel he is going to be a rider that can win a race, but who knows, over these next couple of rounds, if he continues to build that confidence, and you know, being the fact that it's a race every 3 or 4 days, maybe that's going to help him. Maybe that is really going to help him get up there and maybe push for those top 2 positions as well. Good solid ride again by Osborne last week, the round before. A great ride by Osborne. We did say that he was going to be someone that was going to be up there battling it out for a podium. I didn't think we'd see him up there for the win or close to the win. It was a shame he couldn't hold on for a few more laps, but you know, he's going to be another one. Someone else I wanted to bring up from the very first vlog is Bam Bam. We're seeing it again, you know, out there trying to just hit Tomac as he was going past him in that final, or whenever the race was. It's ridiculous. Tomac doesn't need that for the championship. Bam Bam really just needs to concentrate on being Justin Barsha. I think he's probably already written the Supercross championship off. He is going to be a big contender in the motocross. I hope that he's going to go out there and ride the way that everyone knows he can. And be that major contender in that motocross championship. We know he's fast, and we'd like to see him get up there and do that again. So what are your thoughts on this one? This is another race down. We've got 4 to go. There's been some great exciting races. We're thrilled to see that the championships are still being kept alive by both classes at the moment. Of course, next week we get to see, Wednesday we get to see the West Coast riders for the 250s come back out with a couple of returns. The Lawrence boys are going to be there. That field is going to be stacked when we get back for that one. I can't wait to see that one. What do you think? Make the call now. This is for the lights. Who do you think is going to be up there? There's plenty of guys that can get up there in these races. They've got nothing to lose anymore. Are they going to get up there and jump on that top step, or will Fernandez just blow them all away again? For the Opens, who's going to do it? For the 450 class, who's going to win these races? It's going to be a big power play by all of these guys to try and get up there. Of course, we would expect it's still going to be between Tomac and Webb going into these next few races if the track deteriorates. Tomac is so hard to beat. Did you see the way he was standing up through that rut the whole way after the finish line jump? That's what I speak of with Tomac. The way he rides, the way he can get around corners when he's in that beast mode is just something else to watch. So tell me who you think is going to be up there. Make sure you subscribe and you like this, and we'll try and bring a few more. We'll try and make some predictions and pick apart what we think is happening in these races. It's been a great year so far, and there's still 4 races to go. I'm really looking forward to how these next few rounds play out. Thanks for watching, and we'll catch you on the next one.